they ripped my baby from my arms. I screamed until my throat burned, my nails scratching at hands I didn't even recognize. My little boy, my sweet 3-month-old Noah, was crying, his tiny fists waving helplessly as they pulled him away. I could smell his baby powder. I could feel the warmth of his blanket in my arms 1 second, and then nothing. Just cold emptiness. Please. That's my baby. Give him back. I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the chaos. The woman holding him didn't even look at me. Her face was stone. And behind her, a tall man in a black suit blocked my path. His hand gripped my shoulder with a force that felt like it could snap bone. You don't understand. I sobbed. He's mine. He's mine. But they didn't care. Noah's cry was fading, drowned out by the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And then the woman said something, one sentence, that froze my blood. He's not yours to keep. My knees buckled. My stomach twisted into something sharp and sick. What did she mean? Not mine? And before I could ask, they shoved me back, the door slammed shut, and Noah, my Noah, was gone. I swear in that moment, I felt my soul leave my body. What I didn't know then was that the reason they took him would shatter my life in a way I never thought possible. But maybe I should start from the beginning. My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 29 years old, born and raised in a quiet little town in Ohio. I wasn't the kind of person who made enemies. I worked as a preschool teacher, loved kids, and had a small but close circle of friends. I had one younger sister, Emily, who lived out in California, and my parents were still in the same house I grew up in. Life wasn't perfect, but it was safe until I met Adam. He was charming in that way that feels like it belongs in a movie. Messy brown hair, crooked smile, and eyes that could melt you from across the room. I met him at a friend's barbecue, and before I even realized it, we were spending almost every day together. He made me laugh. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world. 6 months later, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but when I told Adam, he didn't panic. He held me close and whispered, "We'll figure it out together." And I believed him. At first, things were beautiful. He came with me to every doctor's appointment, painted the nursery, and even picked out Noah's name himself. But slowly, little cracks began to show. He started working late, too late. His phone would buzz at night, and he'd step outside to answer. He became short-tempered, defensive, and sometimes I caught him looking at me like I was a stranger. Still, I clung to the hope that things would get better once the baby came. When Noah was born, I thought I had found my purpose. He was perfect, soft skin, bright blue eyes, and a tiny laugh that made the world feel lighter. But Adam wasn't the same. He became distant, sometimes disappearing for hours without telling me where he went. One night, about 2 weeks after Noah was born, Adam came home smelling like perfume, not mine. I asked where he'd been, and his answer was sharp, almost cruel. "Don't start, Claire. I've got enough stress without your nagging." That was the first time I felt a deep, gnawing fear that maybe I didn't really know the man I had a child with. Things escalated fast after that. I started getting strange phone calls, someone breathing on the other end, and then hanging up. Once, I found a note under my door that read, "You don't deserve him. Or the baby." I didn't know who it was from. I didn't know if it was a sick prank or a real threat. But the way Adam brushed it off made me uneasy. "People are weird," he said, shrugging. But his eyes didn't meet mine. Then came the day everything cracked wide open. I had just come home from a quick grocery run. Noah was asleep in his bassinet. I went to put the bags down, and the front door slammed behind me. Before I could turn around, there were footsteps, fast, heavy, and a shadow moving toward Noah's crib. I screamed his name and ran forward, but a hand clamped over my mouth, yanking me back. My heart pounded so hard it hurt, and that's when I saw her for the first time, tall, cold eyes, holding my baby in her arms like she had every right in the world. What happened next is something I'll never forget. "Give him back," I screamed, my voice raw, but the tall woman only clutched Noah tighter, her cold eyes fixed on me like I was nothing more than a nuisance. The man behind her stepped forward, blocking my path. Stay back, Claire, he said, his voice low but dangerous. You don't want to make this harder than it already is. Harder? The word made my stomach twist. What could possibly be harder than having my child stolen from me right in front of my eyes? I lunged forward, but the man grabbed my wrists and shoved me against the wall so hard I felt the air leave my lungs. Noah started crying louder, his tiny face scrunching up in distress. Please, I begged, the sound breaking into sobs. He's just a baby. Why are you doing this? The woman's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Ask Adam, she said softly. If he hasn't told you by now, maybe you never really knew him. And just like that, they were gone, slipping out the front door, down the steps, into a black SUV that peeled away so fast it left tire marks on the street. I collapsed on the floor, my whole body shaking. My mind was spinning, searching for answers, replaying every moment I had with Adam, every strange late-night phone call, every unexplained absence. I didn't even hear the door open behind me until a voice said, Claire? What happened? It was my neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, holding a bag of mail she'd picked up for me earlier. One look at my tear-streaked face and the empty bassinet, and her expression changed from confusion to horror. They took him, I whispered. They took Noah. Within minutes, the police were in my living room. I told them everything, the woman, the man, the SUV, the words she'd said about Adam. They wrote it all down, asked me if I had enemies, if Adam had enemies, if anyone might have a reason to take my child. Adam, I said, my voice trembling. I think this has something to do with him. When they asked where Adam was, I realized I didn't even know. He'd said he was going to run errands that morning, but he hadn't answered my calls since. The officers promised to issue an Amber Alert, but they also warned me. If this is tied to something your partner did, you need to be honest with us. The faster we know, the faster we can act. I wanted to believe Adam wasn't involved. I wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding. But deep down, something cold was creeping into my chest. Hours later, he finally walked in, calm, casual, like nothing had happened. Where's Noah? I demanded the second he crossed the threshold. He froze. What do you mean? Don't play dumb, Adam. 2 people broke into our home, took our baby, and one of them said you know why. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw real fear flash in his eyes. He sat down heavily on the couch, running a hand through his hair. Claire, there's something I need to tell you. But you have to promise not to freak out. My hands clenched into fists. Tell me. Now. He looked at me for a long moment before speaking. Before I met you, I was engaged. Her name was Vanessa. Things ended badly. I owed her family money I couldn't pay back. I thought they'd moved on, but he swallowed hard. I guess they didn't. I stared at him in disbelief. You think this is about money? It's about more than that, he said, his voice low. Vanessa's father is powerful, dangerous. He told me once if I ever crossed him, he'd take something from me I could never replace. My stomach dropped. So, he took our son? Adam's silence was all the answer I needed. For a moment, the room felt like it was closing in on me. My baby was in the hands of people who wanted revenge. And the man I trusted had been keeping secrets that might cost me everything. Before I could say another word, there was a knock at the door, loud, forceful, like whoever was on the other side wasn't going to wait for an invitation. Adam's eyes went wide. Don't open it, he whispered. But it was too late. The door swung open, and 2 uniformed officers stepped in. Adam Carter? One of them said. Adam stood slowly. Yeah. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and the officer glanced at me. Possible involvement in the abduction of your child. My heart slammed against my ribs as they turned him around and cuffed him right there in our living room. And in that moment, one thing became terrifyingly clear. If Adam was going to prison, I might be the only one left to save Noah. I couldn't even breathe as the officers led Adam out of the house. The clink of the handcuffs echoed in my ears like a death sentence. My mind screamed 1,000 questions at once. How could he? Was Noah safe? Was Adam working with them? One of the officers stayed behind, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that was calm but firm. "Mrs. Thompson, we need you to come with us for questioning." I nodded numbly, grabbing my coat, my legs moving like they belonged to someone else. At the station, they put me in a small, cold room with a metal table and 2 chairs. A camera watched from the corner. I sat there, my fingers twisting together until the skin turned red. When the officer came back, she didn't waste time. "Claire, we believe your husband's past dealings with the Carter family have put you and your child in danger. But to help us, you need to be completely honest. Did you know about Adam's debts? His business partners?" "No," I said, my voice shaking. I knew he'd been engaged before, but debts? Fraud? This is all new to me. He told me her father was dangerous, but he never told me he owed money. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, Adam with a woman I didn't recognize. She was beautiful, in an icy kind of way, with sleek black hair and piercing eyes. Her arm was looped through Adam's, and they were smiling like they didn't have a care in the world. "That's Vanessa," the officer said. "Taken last month." My mouth went dry. Last month? But he was with me. We were raising a newborn. "According to witnesses," she continued, "Vanessa's family never forgave Adam, and they may believe your son is their blood." The words slammed into me like a punch. Their blood. Noah wasn't just leverage, he was a claim. I felt dizzy, my chest tightening. "You think they'll try to keep him?" "That's one possibility," she said carefully. "But there's something else. We intercepted a message this morning. Someone in Vanessa's circle was arranging for a package to be moved across state lines tonight." The blood drained from my face. "Package? You mean?" She nodded grimly. "We believe that package is Noah." Panic surged through me. "Then why are we sitting here? We have to go." The officer held up a hand. "We will. But this is a delicate situation. If we move too soon, they'll disappear. If we wait too long, we may lose him forever." The thought of waiting made my skin crawl. Every second that passed was another second my baby was in their hands. They let me go home that evening, but it didn't feel like home anymore. The nursery was too quiet, the air too still. I sat in Noah's rocking chair, holding one of his tiny blankets, breathing in the fading scent of him until my chest ached. Hours crawled by. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I just stared at the phone, waiting for news. Then, at 2:13 a.m., my phone lit up with a blocked number. My hand trembled as I answered. "Hello." A woman's voice, low and cold, slithered through the line. "You're not getting him back, Claire. You were never meant to have him." My breath caught in my throat. "Please, please, just tell me he's okay." A soft laugh. "He's more than okay. He's exactly where he belongs. Why are you doing this?" I cried. Her tone sharpened. "Because Adam took something from me. And now I'm taking something from him. An eye for an eye." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stood there, frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. Then I noticed something, on the kitchen counter, next to the phone, an envelope that hadn't been there earlier. My name was scrawled across it in messy, hurried handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. Noah. In a car seat. A shadowy figure in the driver's seat. And through the back window, a highway sign. I knew that sign. They were already leaving the state. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I just grabbed my car keys and the photograph, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. The highway sign in the picture was clear in my mind. It was the one near the state line, heading toward Pennsylvania. If I drove fast, I might catch them before they crossed over. I called the detective on my way. "I know where they're going," I said, my voice frantic. "There's a photo. They're heading toward Route 76, near the state line." "Claire, do not engage," she warned sharply. "We're dispatching units now. Stay put." But staying put wasn't an option. Every second I wasted was another mile between me and Noah. The roads were slick from rain, streetlights blurring through the windshield. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My mind replayed the sound of that woman's voice, cold, certain, telling me I was never meant to have my own son. Then I saw it. Up ahead, the taillights of a black SUV, matching the one from earlier, glowed like two red eyes in the darkness. My chest tightened. That's them. I kept my distance, afraid they'd notice me. The SUV swerved slightly, then sped up. They knew. Suddenly, blue and red lights flashed in my rearview mirror. Police. I thought they'd pass me, but instead, they sped right past and closed in on the SUV. The chase was on. The SUV swerved wildly, trying to lose them, tires screeching on wet pavement. I followed just far enough to see it all. The flashing lights, the sirens cutting through the night, the way my heart threatened to pound out of my chest. Then, in a split second, the SUV veered off the highway and onto a dirt road. The police cars followed, mud spraying into the air. I slowed just enough to avoid being noticed, my headlights dim. Trees closed in around the road, the rain making everything slick and dangerous. Then they stopped. The SUV skidded to a halt in the middle of the road, and two figures jumped out, one of them cradling a small bundle. Even through the rain, I knew it was Noah. "Stop right there," a police officer shouted, his gun raised. The woman, Vanessa, didn't stop. She turned toward the woods, clutching my son to her chest, her hair plastered to her face from the rain. I don't know what came over me, but I was out of my car before I even realized it, my feet pounding against the wet ground. "Vanessa," I screamed. "Please. He's just a baby." She turned to face me, her eyes wild. "You think you're his mother?" she spat. "You're nothing. Adam stole him from me before he was even born. I'm just taking back what's mine." My mind reeled. "What are you talking about?" But before she could answer, one of the officers moved closer, and in that instant, everything happened at once. Vanessa backed toward the trees, an officer lunged, and I heard the sharp crack of something breaking. Vanessa slipped, and Noah's wail pierced the night. I rushed forward, my heart in my throat, but just as I reached out, Vanessa pulled a gun from her jacket and pointed it at my chest. "Stay back, Claire," she hissed, "or you'll never see him again." Rain dripped from the barrel of the gun, its black metal glinting under the faint beam of a police flashlight. I froze, my breath shallow, every muscle locked in place. Vanessa's grip on Noah was tight, too tight. His tiny cries cut through the night like a blade, and it took everything in me not to lunge forward. "You have no idea, do you?" Vanessa's voice was low, almost trembling, though her hand on the gun was steady. "Adam lied to you from the very beginning." "Put the gun down, Vanessa," an officer called from behind me. "We can talk about this." She ignored him. Her eyes stayed locked on mine. "That baby is mine." My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. "You're insane," I said, shaking my head. "I gave birth to him. I was there." "You think you did." She cut me off sharply, her voice edged with something close to pity. "But you never saw the paperwork, did you? You never asked why Adam didn't want you awake for that C-section. He switched the babies, Claire. My baby for yours." The words hit me like a physical blow. My legs wobbled, the rain mixing with the hot sting of tears in my eyes. No, you're lying." She smirked bitterly. "Am I? Then ask yourself this. Why do his eyes look nothing like yours? Why did Adam take him to the doctor without you that first week? He was making sure there was no mistake, making sure the switch stuck." My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick. Could it be true? No, it couldn't. "Even if that's true," I said, my voice shaking, "he's still my son. I'm the one who's raised him. I'm the one who's loved him since the second he took his first breath." Vanessa's expression hardened. "Love doesn't change blood." And then she moved, fast, spinning toward the trees. Officers shouted, their voices frantic, and I saw one of them raise his weapon. "Hold your fire," another yelled. "She has the baby." I didn't think. I just ran. My feet pounded the mud as I chased her into the darkness, branches whipping against my arms and face. I could barely see, but I could hear Noah's cries ahead of me, pulling me forward. Then crack. A gunshot split the air. My heart stopped. For a split second, I didn't know who had fired. I didn't know if Noah had been hit. I burst into a small clearing just in time to see Vanessa stumble, clutching her arm. The gun clattered to the ground. Noah was still in her arms, screaming, but alive. I lunged for him, my fingers brushing the soft edge of his blanket. And then someone else stepped out from the shadows. Tall. Broad shoulders. Familiar. Adam. His face was pale, his eyes burning with something between rage and desperation. "Everybody stop," he said, his voice trembling. "This ends now." Rain dripped from Adam's hair, his chest heaving as he stood between me, Vanessa, and the circle of police closing in. His hands were raised, but his eyes kept darting to Noah. "Adam," I said, my voice breaking. "Tell me the truth. Did you do it? Did you take her baby and give him to me?" He closed his eyes for a moment, like the weight of it all was finally crushing him. When he opened them, the answer was there before he even spoke. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "I did." The world tilted. I couldn't breathe. Vanessa let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "Finally, he admits it." "I wasn't trying to hurt you, Claire," Adam said quickly, his words spilling out. "I was trying to save you. Vanessa's family, they're monsters. She was pregnant, and her father was going to sell the baby to settle one of his debts. I switched them so he couldn't." Vanessa's eyes flashed. "You didn't save anyone, Adam. You stole my child and gave him to a woman who didn't even know the truth." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. "You didn't give me a choice. You didn't give either of us a choice." The officers were edging closer, their guns drawn, voices tight with warnings. Adam took a step toward Vanessa, his voice low and pleading. "Please, just let me hold him one more time. We can figure this out." "No one has to. Stay where you are," an officer barked. Vanessa's grip on Noah tightened. "You'll never touch him again." Something in Adam snapped. In one swift move, he lunged for her. The gun on the ground flashed in the mud as Vanessa screamed. I moved too, throwing myself toward Noah, my arms outstretched. The world exploded, shouts, a struggle, the sound of another gunshot cutting through the night. When the ringing in my ears cleared, the scene was frozen in front of me. Vanessa was on the ground, clutching her shoulder. Adam was on his knees, his hands covered in blood, his own. And Noah was in my arms. I held him so tightly I could feel his heartbeat against mine, his cries soft and weak but alive. Adam looked at me, pain etched across his face. "Claire, I'm sorry. I just wanted to protect you." His voice cracked. "Take care of him." The officers swarmed in, pulling Vanessa away, some rushing to Adam. But I couldn't watch. My world had narrowed to the warm, fragile weight of my son in my arms. Hours later, at the hospital, they told me Adam would make it. Vanessa was under arrest. And as for Noah, the DNA tests confirmed it. He wasn't biologically mine. The law said he would go into custody until the courts decided. But when the social worker came to take him from my hospital room, I clung to him the same way I had the night they tried to rip him from my arms. "He's mine," I whispered fiercely. "I don't care what your papers say. He's my son." She hesitated, then gently pried him from my grasp. The emptiness that followed was worse than death. As they walked out with him, Noah looked back at me with those wide blue eyes, and I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end. If I had to burn the world down to get him back, I would. The months that followed were the longest of my life. Court hearings, lawyer meetings, endless paperwork. Every day felt like a war I was barely strong enough to fight. Vanessa's family tried to paint me as a thief, someone who had knowingly kept a child that wasn't mine. I fought back with everything I had, witnesses, records, the truth about the night they broke into my home. Adam's death complicated everything. He couldn't testify, couldn't explain why he did what he did. All I had were his last words and the memories of the man I thought I knew. The court-appointed psychologist asked me one question that stuck with me. "If you lose this case, will you still fight for him?" I didn't even hesitate. Until my last breath. The trial dragged on for weeks. I sat through every session, my eyes fixed on Noah, who was too young to understand why he wasn't coming home with me at the end of the day. Then, one crisp autumn morning, the judge read the verdict. In the best interest of the child, custody will be granted to Claire Thompson, with all parental rights transferred. I don't remember standing up. I just remember the sound of my own sobs as they placed Noah in my arms, his tiny hands grabbing at my shirt like he never wanted to let go. Vanessa didn't speak to me as she left the courtroom. She just gave me one last, burning look before walking away. I knew this wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't peace. But it was over. Driving home with Noah that day, the sun felt warmer. The world felt lighter. The nightmare was behind us. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect. There would be questions, scars, and nights when I'd wake up fearing someone would come take him again. But as I strapped him into his crib that night and watched him sleep, I made a silent promise. No one will ever rip you from my arms again. And this time I meant it.